right. Are you guys ladies?
I'm ladies. I'm pretty sure Louise is ladies. I know you're ladies. So, ladies checking in. Hi.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
I'm less dead than normal.
I like that news. That's good news. Less dead than normal. I mean, cheers to that.
There might be less coughing to edit out this episode finally.
Ooh, I'm so excited about that. But I've come to really recognize your cough in all of its sound wave beauty. I know exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, I'd still prefer it's not there.
Welcome back to Taboos, you guys. This is our very final week of No Fucks Given November. No Fucks Given November.
Whoop whoop, you guys survived.
You
Congratulations.
did. Round of applause to everybody. Seriously, we are so thrilled if you made it through this month with us. We are so grateful if you made it through this month with us. This month was so important to us, and I really appreciate the feedback that we've gotten and the things that we've seen and the love that we've gotten on all of our episodes this month. Truly amazing.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. The listens have actually outperformed all of our other episodes, so you guys really showed up and showed the support for this month, and we're speechless. I'm speechless.
I'm also speechless.
I disagree with that. You always have words.
Rude.
No, nope, rude. Just true.
But you're not wrong.
Rude, but I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Well, okay, so speaking of that, you guys, I want to start this episode just a little bit different than we normally do. We do have a special guest joining us today, but I have a surprise for Allie here with us because I just am so unbelievably proud of all we've accomplished in 3 short months. I'm just absolutely beside myself. Truly I am. To think that a few months ago I was joking with her and asked if we started a podcast, and her response was absolutely not. I reapproached the subject with, what do you think of the name Taboos? And we talk about taboo culture on our podcast. And she was like, that's really cute. And I said, I know. And she was like, let me talk to Nick. And then here we are.
To clarify, you initially wanted me to be in a podcast where I read a book a week. I was like, do you know my life? That is not even a thing.
You're not wrong. And honestly, we couldn't corner that market because there are so many other great book podcasts out there, like Page Turners and Button Mashers. Shout out to Nikki and Tyler for that. We'll leave the books alone. This is more our vein anyway. This is what we're made to do.
I agree.
So in honor of achieving 3 months on this crazy journey that I am so unbelievably proud of, and I feel so blessed to be doing with you, my best friend in the whole world. We have champagne today. Also, not only the podcast thing, which is part of that. So bullet point 1, podcast. Bullet point 2, for anybody who follows me on Twitter, you'll know that I posted on Friday the 13th that I had a pretty fucking terrible Friday the 13th. We lost our kitten Static on Friday, actually Thursday night, but I didn't know until Friday morning, and it was pretty terrible. I have never lost a pet before, and I had no idea what to fucking do, and it was just the worst.
To clarify, by lost, she means ran away, not dead. Not dead, yeah.
He's not dead. No, he ran away. He teleported out of my house. I have no idea how he got out, but he did, and the support from everybody was so amazing, but I want to give a special shout outs to Kel, who came over and helped me tear apart my house and put it back together and gave me love. I want to give a huge shout out to my parents and my sister, who took Tiny for the whole weekend and just really gave me time to comb the neighborhood and hand out flyers and ugly cry nonstop, because that was real. But also, I want to thank you, because as I was on my 68th house of the morning, you came rolling down the street, and I couldn't help but just feel happy in that moment. And this whole weekend, I didn't feel any happiness, because all I felt was hope and then dread and then hope and then dread. And it was just so brutal. And in that moment, when you and Moose came rolling down the street, I was just happy. And I was so grateful for you and to see your face. And then
I couldn't just do nothing, but I also was awaiting a COVID test.
I know, but I think
which
that
is negative,
yay, negative test. But that's part of it. Like that's just part of it. And I wanted to share that with our listeners because I need you guys to really hear me when I say that I have the best friend ever. I have the best fucking friend ever. And I really just want you guys to hear how much I appreciate this woman, this beautiful, brave, smart, funny, sexy, amazing woman who I love so much. And I get to share her every week with you guys. And that just makes me so happy. So there was me tying our friendship and our podcast together in that moment.
Meanwhile, I'm over here just being the asshole that doesn't have a 3-month gift for you and just sitting here like, cool.
Okay,
Hi.
so I have a gift. This gift is your Christmas present. It is a thank you for helping me find Static. It is a congratulations on our 3-month anniversary. It is, I'm sure, some sort of friendship anniversary that I have missed. It's I'm sorry for missing the day of your birthday every year, but always celebrating your birthday. I just have no concept of fucking calendar time. This is just an all-encompassing gift of how much I fucking love you and how grateful I am for you. Also, because we hit 130 listens on White Privilege in 14 days, and I'm so fucking proud of that.
Yep, same.
So this gift is for all of those occasions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
For you guys listening, I'm actually atrocious at accepting gifts.
Yeah, she is. It's fucking terrible. So when you just hear deadpan, like, no, she's really excited.
You are such a dork. I am super excited.
I know you are.
Okay. So I've received heated gloves.
They're amazing. It's like a seat warmer for your fucking hands.
I have Raynaud syndrome.
Or Menard's syndrome.
Yep. Which in Wisconsin is fucking piece of shit syndrome to have. And basically it just means that the blood flow to my extremities sucks and my fingers and toes and whatever the fuck else turns purple when it's cold out.
Like really quickly too.
And when you have a toddler that doesn't want to come inside, that makes for interesting times. And it's already begun. So the other day I was outside with Moose. He didn't want to come in. I took pictures because my fingers were purple and basically said winter has come. So I am super excited. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
These are the shit.
They're so comfortable. Okay, and then also just a side little story. You guys know that we're not really a banter podcast, but this is just, you're sharing this moment with us, so here we are. So, fun story about me. I have the smallest hands ever. Like, I literally have very, very fucking small hands. And on this box for these heated gloves, may I?
Did you open them?
No.
Oh, okay.
I tested them in the store.
Gotcha.
For these gloves, they have this hand chart, okay? So in the store, I got you medium, you can see.
Yeah.
And I tried them on and I was like, oh, these are a little big, but your hands are not as fucking microscopic as my hands.
No, I have kangaroo hands and feet.
Kangaroo hands.
Yes.
Wow. I don't see that, but your hands are bigger than my fucking baby hands. So I don't know. Everybody's hands are bigger than my fucking hands. So I tried on the medium and I was like, it's just a little bit big, but that'll be okay for you. And then I get them home and I texted you your size and you didn't answer because you don't answer. And then I texted Nick who did answer and he said the medium should be okay. And while I was looking and waiting for a response, I saw this size chart. Okay. Watch this.
Okay.
So there's this size chart where you put your wrist at the bottom of the box and then it tells you there are little increments of sizes for the fingertips measuring at your middle finger.
That is super fucking smart.
I fucking love it. Okay, here we go. Wrist down, fingers on. Where do I fall?
Oh my god, what is that?
Smaller than the extra fucking small.
Oh my god, okay, hang on.
I am literally, you guys, the box basically says toddler gloves.
Oh, look at that, medium's perfect.
Oh look, medium will be perfect.
That's baller.
So yeah,
That is so smart.
I know. I loved it.
Thank you.
You are so unbelievably welcome. I really hope you wear the shit out of them because they're so comfortable and they make your fingers literally feel like they're in a little toaster.
We're going hunting in 2 weeks, so
Perfect.
yeah, 2 weeks.
Oh, that's amazing. So there was our little friendship moment. Thank you guys. A huge part of that. We couldn't even be celebrating without you guys. So thank you for being a part of that moment with us and honestly just getting us to this point at all.
Yeah, thank you.
So without further ado,
let's roll into the final episode of No Fucks Given November.
No Fucks Given November. We are making shirts that say I survived No Fucks Given November. They will be on our merch page. Is that what it is called?
Yeah.
They will be on our merch page. I don't know what just happened. I totally just had a brain aneurysm. Sorry.
I also looked at you like I don't know what the fuck this is.
What the fuck are we doing? All right. So Allie is correct. Let's get started on our last episode of No Fucks Given November. This week is going to be absolutely amazing. I'm so excited. You know what? We're just going to skip the intro altogether and just let you guys know that we have yet another special guest with us today. And we are going to go call her and we'll be right back. Hello, Miss Louise. Thank you so much for joining us today. Oh my God, I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You're welcome.
This is going to be an amazing episode. I cannot wait.
I also cannot wait. Today is not Thanksgiving, but this episode will be airing on November 26th.
It's going to be airing on Thanksgiving.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why I said ooh
I
in
know.
the middle of your sentence.
But I also, for anybody who is listening to this episode on the date it airs, it's Thanksgiving.
Thank you for saying the same thing twice in the same sentence.
You're welcome. It's what I'm here to do. It's all I do here.
I think that's a good segue as to what this episode is about.
Cheers!
Hey, anybody in this room or in another room on this call want to tell me that Thanksgiving may or may not truly be about what we think it's about? That sentence made no sense.
It didn't,
Somebody
but
save me.
You were such an asshole to me.
I will confirm that Thanksgiving is probably not what we all think it's about.
I'm also of the position that Thanksgiving is not what we think it is, which I have a dichotomy about because Thanksgiving as a conceptual holiday is actually my favorite holiday.
Mm-hmm.
What Thanksgiving represents in the fact of why it's a holiday, I really fucking hate.
Agreed.
So that's why this episode is happening. And on Thanksgiving. And as our last episode of No Fucks Given November.
So to clarify, this episode is the truth behind Thanksgiving.
Dun dun dun!
I knew you were going to make that exact noise. I literally was sitting here waiting for it.
I know, I could tell. I could tell by the way that you were looking at me waiting to take a drink.
Crazy.
Speaking of drinks,
Okay.
And also our guest, Louise, who we are going to allow to introduce herself in just a moment. But let's talk about drinks. Miss Louise, what are you having to drink this evening?
I am having some turmeric hot tea in my Wonder Woman mug.
Ooh, cheers
Ooh,
to
I
Wonder
love that.
Woman mug. I love it.
That's what I should be drinking because my throat is still not healed.
It's not, but you do sound better.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm glad because I know this episode you were really excited about because it's yours.
Hopefully by November 2021. I literally couldn't think of what next year was.
I watched those gears turn too. That was impressive. Allie, would you like to tell our listeners what we are drinking tonight?
We're drinking mimosas.
We are. We totally forgot to talk about it in our pre-calling Louise celebration. So here's us telling you we're drinking mimosas as celebration of all the things.
All the things.
Cheers, ladies, to
Cheers.
the things.
Cheers.
Clink.
I'm not going to try to clink glasses because
We had a issue with the cork pop with the champagne. It was good. So, Miss Louise, would you like to introduce yourself for our listeners and so that we can get this conversation started because I am so excited.
Sure, I would love to. So my name is Louise. I am a citizen of a tribal nation of Wisconsin on my dad's side. I'm also Aztec in ancestry on my dad's side, and I am European on my mom's side. So coming from that background, I think I have had a unique experience with Thanksgiving through my many years of life.
Yeah, speaking of dichotomy, like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So awesome, and yet so many things happening. Like, what a controversial perspective.
Agreed.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Like, seriously.
I am too.
Same. Okay, I'm gonna find somewhere safe to put. Oh, look it! Thank you for momming me.
You're welcome.
I just found somewhere safe to put my drink.
Second job that I do this podcast.
Are you guys ready to dive into some history?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
There is a lot. There is a lot of sources in this episode, so buckle up, Buttercup.
I'm buckled, and I'm here for the sources. You know I love citing my sources.
So, to start out with this first part, my sources were Bustle, HuffPost, SmithsonMag.com, History.com, and the New York Times.
Nice variety. Cheers to Bustle.
Cheers to Bustle. So I found a quote from SmithsonianMag.com from an interview that they did with a person of Native American descent who was discussing how Thanksgiving impacted them growing up. And I thought that this quote was extremely important and summed up how I wanted to start this out.
I'm excited for it. Let's hear it.
What is the Thanksgiving myth? The myth is that friendly Indians, unidentified by tribe, welcomed the Pilgrims to America, teach them how to live in this new place, sit down to dinner with them, and then disappear. They hand off America to white people so that they can create a great nation dedicated to liberty, opportunity, and Christianity for the rest of the world to profit. That's the story. It's about Native people conceding to colonialism. It's bloodless and in many ways an extension of the ideology of manifest destiny.
Okay.
End quote.
End quote.
And I thought that was a perfect summation of what I personally at least learned Thanksgiving was in school.
No, same. Exactly the same thing. Like, I don't know if I could have articulated it to that level, but definitely that is what I was taught growing up in a Eurocentric education system.
And Louise, what did you learn about Thanksgiving growing up in school?
So just like Celeste said, I don't think that I could articulate it quite as well as the person that you quoted, but that was pretty much it. I did not grow up I did not grow up with other Native people around me. I didn't grow up on the reservation. I actually grew up in the South where there was like no Native people.
Oh.
So it was definitely a unique experience to know that I am part of this culture, that I was basically being taught something very unrealistic about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did that cause any issues for you as you were growing up? Maybe not in like your self-identity as Louise, but your self-identity as in where you came from?
Absolutely. So if I can share a story.
Share away.
Just to put into perspective what a dichotomy it was. Okay. So before I lived in the South, this was when I was a small child, I want to say first grade, we lived in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And there was a very multicultural population there. But again, like no Native people. There were Hispanic people. There were people from like the Middle East, and then of course you had your white people. And so being one of the non-white groups of people, we would always be split into like the white kids and then the other kids when it came to
not
Thanksgiving.
White kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
So I guess the best example that I can give for like a visual of this is if you guys have ever seen Addams Family Values, where they're at camp and they have to do this play where there's all of these white kids and then all of the other kids. Like that is how my school was set up. That's how it was in Northern Virginia. That's how it was in Georgia when I lived there. But the thing is that I did not know that I was actually part of the Native American group culturally until after I had been participating in this.
Oh my God.
So kind of going back when I was in first grade, I can remember learning about kind of the civil rights movement for Martin Luther King Day, right? And so I come home, my parents are together at this time, and I start talking to my dad about being Black. because I didn't know that he was not Black. I just knew that he was darker than my mom and that I was kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation that I had with my parents at that time was my mom saying, oh, no, we're not Black. You're not Black. Your dad's not Black. Like really dismissing what I was saying, and then also not admitting necessarily to what his culture was.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so then after they separated, my dad is originally from this area, so he came back up this way, and my mom and I moved to Georgia, where pretty much the same thing. There was no Native people. And I think because, and then there was also a strong desire for kind of fitting in with all of the white folks. So there was a lot of pressure on me to be this certain person that even though I knew that I wasn't necessarily that, I did not know what I was. I did not know how to identify. So it created I would say, large amount of like struggle with my own cultural identity and my own personal identity, really until I moved up here after high school. And I've lived here for about the last 20 years. So
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Sorry, that was kind of a long answer to a short question.
No. Oh my God. Never during this call or any conversation you have with us, please don't be sorry for anything you say. We want to hear all of it.
Yeah, that's literally why we have you on.
It is why we have you on. And
It's
also I'm
not-
punching my glass.
Cool.
It's not just for the podcast either. Like, we want to learn. This is
Yeah.
the podcast really was started for us. So
It was honestly like we're just open to these conversations, and we know we could not gain from research what we could possibly ever gain from hearing your experiences and your perspectives and what you've gone through as a Native woman in this country. And I mean, we're having this conversation personally, but also this conversation benefits other Native Americans who might listen to our podcast, or other just cultures in general who listen to our podcast, who are like, oh, I didn't know that. Maybe I should look at this differently. So there's a lot of different facets of this conversation, but please don't ever be sorry for anything that you say at all. Like, we're here for it.
Awesome.
Agreed.
Thank you.
So going back to some history here, I'm about to debunk some things, at least things that I personally learned in school. So
Things I also learned. So debunk away, baby.
first off, the settlers weren't actually coming here to seek religious freedom, as I was told.
Shut up. They weren't?
Nope.
The British Tea Party was all bullshit?
I'll expand upon that.
Okay.
They had already found religious freedom in Holland when they first arrived there in the 17th century. They came to the States to make money as they were in poverty in Holland, and there was promise of great economic prosperity across the ocean. They also wanted to spread the word of God. So they already had the religious freedom.
They had their freedom. They wanted to impress that freedom upon other fucking people by taking away their freedom?
Well, there's that. There's also, to a degree, they were afraid that the Dutch people's influence, quote unquote, was bad for their children. And and they were in poverty and heard that across the ocean there's all these opportunities. So go there, it'll be great. La-di-da.
This feels like the appropriate time for me to interject my favorite line of Fuhk Christopher Columbus. I know we're going to talk about him.
Well, no, he doesn't come up here.
Oh. Well,
Sorry.
I'm just excited to say it a bunch of times in this episode.
Yes, I would say as many times as you want. Fuck Christopher Columbus.
Fuck Christopher Columbus.
So what Allie had kind of talked about is from my understanding is absolutely true. So the church of Europe, I guess, I mean, I know it wasn't, Christianity was spread pretty much throughout Europe. And even my understanding is with obstacles or conflict between Protestants and Catholics, they had pretty much agreed upon this idea of the doctrine of discovery, which basically said, if you as a Christian come across people who are non-Christian, they are non-human. Therefore, any other morality that you would otherwise subscribe to, you don't have to, because if they're not Christian, they're not human. And they brought that philosophy with them.
So basically, like, The Purge meets religion.
I've never seen The Purge.
I have not either,
So,
but
maybe?
I believe you.
I also
you
believe
guys,
you.
the one scary movie that I've seen. No, neither of you have seen. That's awesome. But that's what I interpret that as, is So the premise of the purge is you have 24 hours to do literally whatever you want, break any law. There are zero consequences for this 24-hour period. It's like this national holiday. So that's what I think about to what you're saying, Louise. But then pair that with religion. So it's not a 24-hour period that you get to do whatever you want. It's to anyone who is not Christian, you get to do whatever you want.
Correct.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. Which is, kind of, and I don't mean to get ahead of ourselves here, but kind of why the first contact worked so well, right? Because there are many different tribal nations here in the United States now, and there were at the time of, when colonization began. But, and even though each tribe and everybody has their own kind of unique language and culture and practices and everything, there was this kind of common thread philosophy that, yes, we are all human beings whose lives are valued, and we want to be able to provide collectively for the greater good of human being. And so that was the philosophy of the native people that were already here. So when they see, their European counterparts coming and they see that they're in need, yes, because of the deeply rooted philosophy that they had been living by for thousands of years, they're going to help them get out of poverty, provide them with resources that they need to survive. Meanwhile, the people that are coming here had the philosophy of, yes, you should be providing us with those things because we are superior to you because we are Christian. So I think that kind of differences in worldviews when maybe the Pilgrims and indigenous people first met is why it kind of led down that road to be easily taken advantage of throughout colonization.
Yeah. And I know you have another point, but super, super fast, because Louise just said this, and this really brought me back to our white privilege episode where we talk about white supremacy pretty deeply. What you just said, Louise, was that the Native American people offered help, right? And from this perspective of what we're talking about, the Christian people took it. But we know that those Christian people were European, which historically European people have been white in complexion. I actually am really curious if that entitlement as it approached our continent is really the foundation of white supremacy. That seed alone, are you guys following me in what I'm saying?
Yeah, I believe so, because in Black culture, in Asian American culture, in Native American culture, we talk about that historical trauma, right, being passed down from generation to generation. I absolutely believe that idea of supremacy has been passed down from generation to generation as well.
Yeah, and truly, it had to have started here with Native Americans, because in Europe, everyone, I mean, I'm not being insensitive, but in Europe, the majority of people were white.
Well, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it started here with Native Americans. I think it started wherever there was somebody that somebody else could step on, and the privileged were always white regardless.
That's fair.
And they were the ones that came over to continue to step on other people in other lands. So it literally just started with a race and was handed down by that race.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
that's fair. I think I specifically meant in relation to our country, but you are right. And thank you for redirecting that train of thought to be more encompassing, because you're correct. This white supremacy concept is an issue across the globe, but I meant specifically in relation to our country and how deeply rooted white supremacy is in our country. So that's kind of where I was going with that. But
I honestly think that religion gave some sort of false narrative to
all
the
kinds
people
of shit
that practiced it, and they got blown up heads and fucking worshiped themselves. And sorry,
don't be sorry. Don't be sorry at all.
No, and I think that you're right. I think that what Celeste said, in this country, that's probably where it came from. But it goes back way farther than that. Like you said, Allie, really it goes back even, pre-Christianity to ancient religions and establishing hierarchies, and anything that humans could do to force themselves into a higher status of power, of greed, of possessions. Anything that they could do is really what drove those hierarchies, which were so normalized in European culture and completely foreign to Native American culture. There was no hierarchies. There was no, I mean, the people had different jobs and different positions, but each one were valued as much as the next, you know?
And contributed to the greater whole.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So then truly, this concept is exactly where the white supremacy pyramid started with our country. Like, honestly, like that's what I'm taking away from that, because to Louise's point, the rest of the world at the time had operated on a hierarchy system. We had never heard of one. And they literally just showed up and were like, this is a hierarchy system.
And you guys are at the bottom.
And that. So I don't know. I appreciate that we explored that. I know that wasn't in your notes, but please carry on with your history because I'm so excited about it.
I know that wasn't in your notes.
I know. It wasn't.
Side tangent on white supremacy and white privilege right here.
Cue Celeste.
It's all intersectional. It all goes together.
Yep. It is. It is. Welcome to No Fucks Given November, Allie.
So the next point of history that, I don't know, I might have learned this portion of it, but the settlers on the Mayflower were actually sailing for Virginia, not Massachusetts, aka Navigate So Hard.
Navigate so hard.
Normally, Plymouth Rock was jam-packed with indigenous settlements, therefore there would have been no room for the Pilgrims. Several epidemics, however, had wiped out the coastal tribes a few years prior, so the settlers basically showed up to a graveyard and immediately began raiding it for food and supplies.
Fucking rude.
Mm-hmm.
Rude.
But think about that. They showed up and benefited on death of the indigenous people that were there.
Yeah. Fucking rude.
I just can't.
But not surprising, because
no, not at all.
There's that sense of entitlement, you know? We deserve that.
Okay, this is what I hate about this month, honestly, and about all of the episodes we've done this month, is it isn't surprising. You're right, because, like, it isn't, and yet it is, because nobody's ever said it to me before. Yeah. Nobody's ever told me the truth about this before, so it is surprising to me because it's brand new information, and yet it's not surprising because I'm like, well, yeah, white people fucking suck. So that's not surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's been my biggest gripe this month.
I know.
I just, like, we need to just learn this.
I don't disagree at all, which is a whole other episode that's not part of No Fucks Given November. Stay tuned.
So, the settlers actually weren't called pilgrims until orator Daniel Webster used the term in 1820. They were originally called saints or separatists.
Oh, fuck me. That's wrong. No.
Well, separatists makes sense.
Yeah, but not saints.
No. I mean, to them at the time it did.
Yeah, that's self-worshipping bullshit, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, duh. No. Carry on.
And contrary to popular belief, it wasn't the first contact situation that a lot of people depict it to be. I'm going to mispronounce a lot of words here, Louise, so for the love of God, please correct me here.
She does it even when she's speaking normal English, so it's okay.
I'll do my best. I don't know if I can. And I just kind of want to interject this here. So there are 574 currently federally recognized tribes in the United States, all with their different cultures and languages. So I don't know those tribes, and there were probably a lot more, 500 years ago. But I will do my best to correct you if needed, if I can.
My face is so happy right now. I felt it. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
I only have a few of them here, so I think I'll be okay, but okay. The Wampanoags had already had a sanctuary.
See, a normal word.
I was so focused on Wampanoag that I can't speak English.
Yep. Cool.
Had a century of often bloody encounters with Europeans prior to the settlers showing up.
Okay.
I believe that, yeah. So in just kind of my history and my reading, I don't know if this is the same, I guess, European group, but that Vikings were here kind of coming from northern, like, Nova Scotia area.
Yep.
Into the Americas long before, like, the Pilgrims did, yeah.
Yeah, and crazy thing is they're still discovering areas that Vikings went to that we don't even know about. Vikings went everywhere, man.
What I love about that, though, I mean, I don't love what Vikings did as far as I know
No, me neither.
Pillage and plunder,
Yeah.
right? Like, we don't need that. But what I appreciate is that they came, they saw, they left. It wasn't that they came, they saw, they overthrew. Because if that were the case, honestly, Nordic culture would have taken over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, seriously, that's insane. So I give small appreciation to Vikings and to Nordic culture for not doing that.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So the first Thanksgiving, air quotes, in 1621 was most likely just a regular harvest celebration. It wasn't even a holiday until Lincoln declared it as one during the Civil War.
That's news to me.
I don't remember what I learned about it in school.
My whole everything, the fact that Lincoln is who made it a holiday, that is completely news to me. And I don't know why, but I just got this very distinct flashback of being in kindergarten in Mrs. Medelman's class, and we made little weave placemats, like construction paper weaved placemats, and little pilgrim's hats. And we were told and taught that this first Thanksgiving was Thanksgiving, and it was a holiday ever since.
Yep, definitely not the case.
Definitely fucking not the case.
And I would be interested to explore, because I don't know the answer to this, if Lincoln declaring Thanksgiving a holiday had anything to do with maybe making up for the execution of 38, I believe, Dakota tribal members, men.
What?
Yeah.
So I only saw a little piece of his reasoning behind it, so I didn't dig deep enough into it, but part of what I saw was essentially they needed a morale booster.
Which isn't surprising. Disgusting.
So I wonder if that's part of the reason,
Yeah, could be.
Also, I know that Lincoln as a president isn't the good guy. He's not the quote-unquote honest Abe that I was raised to believe him to be. Like, okay, I acknowledge that. I'm not ignorant enough to not know that. But what you just shared with us, Louise, that's the first time I've ever heard that. I didn't realize that he had such a tarnished past. I really didn't.
Yeah, and I don't know the entire history behind the Dakota 38. I believe it had something to do with a battle over Dakota or Sioux land that they were trying to defend, and they were unsuccessful in defending it, and Lincoln ordered them executed. I believe the anniversary is the day after Christmas.
Oh, I'm actually speechless. Oh my God.
I'm just rolling my eyes because I'm once again not shocked.
And I am entirely shocked, but not surprised. Oh my God. Okay, please, let's keep talking about the things, because I know that my brain is just going to continue to explode throughout this episode, and I'm going to be nothing but a fucking vegetable by the end of this.
So, as opposed to the commonly depicted story, the Native Americans were most likely not actually invited to the feast. They were probably there because they were responding to gunfire in the area or a diplomatic visit, or because they were planting crops in the area. I love that you were laughing during that too, because
I'm uncomfortably laughing because I just can't. We're having this party, but you're not invited, even though we're using your land, your supplies, your produce, your everything.
By the way, thanks for teaching us how to plant this, and thanks for our first harvest. We're gonna have this party without you.
You're not fucking invited. It's just so fucking stupid. Oh my God. Okay, let's keep going. I'm so excited.
So the Pilgrims, obviously, were unprepared for settlement life in that area and would raid the storehouses and graves of the Wampanoag tribe, who were the same tribe that they later asked for help.
Of course they were. You can't come to our party, but we need you to teach us the things.
This part ties into what you were talking about too earlier, Louise, where you stated how the Native Americans just wanted to help. They believed in helping humans.
Yeah.
Period. Tisquantum, aka Squanto, is often depicted in the Thanksgiving stories and did a ton to help the settlers, such as acting as a translator, helping trade and crop growth, but his backstory isn't told. He was actually captured by the English in 1614 and sold into slavery to Spain. By the time he was able to return to his tribe in 1619, They had been decimated by smallpox, and yet he was still willing to help the pilgrims when he met them.
What a good man.
Yeah, so that just speaks to how wonderful
and welcoming and just inclusive Native American people were.
He was sold into slavery. His tribe was destroyed by the time he got back, and he still
was like, let me help
helped.
you. Oh, that makes me so sad. I fucking hate this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And there's a lot of other history that kind of speaks to that same philosophy and that same treatment. If I can just share a little tidbit, so the Oneida people were originally from the upstate New York area, and they were, like many other tribes, recruited by both the colonizers and the British to fight on their side in the Revolutionary War. So there was an Oneida woman, her name is Polly Cooper. In the winter of 1770 something, so George Washington's troops were starving at Valley Forge, and Polly Cooper, who was an Oneida woman, traveled with our traditional white corn to save these troops, to keep them alive throughout this winter, taught them how to use it, taught them how to ration it, taught them how to not overly consume them for their stomachs to explode. Basically, had her and her people not done that, the colonies would not have won the war, and we would not have had the United States as it stands. The Oneidas, or the way that the troops responded down the road to the Oneida people for helping to win the war, was to relocate them to Wisconsin after burning villages and pillaging and everything. So,
of course it was.
Of course, yeah.
I actually have no words.
Okay, I was waiting.
I really was thinking about, I really have no words. I have no words. Genuinely. I just, holy fuck. And then...
And I mean, and those are just a few examples. Like, another one that comes to mind is, I would say within the last few years around here, there is a historical site where it made the news that, local indigenous artifacts were found under this historical site. And everyone's like, oh, wow, how weird. And I think that we have this idea that as colonization kind of moved westward, from the colonies to this area, that it was all just forest and no man's land, and that buildings were built where there was nothing. And people fail to see the evidence when artifacts are discovered under historical sites that, no, this is evidence that they just plopped their colonization right on top of the community that was already there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is just so fucked up. So fucked up.
So, the slaughter of the Pequot tribe in 1637, in which over 500 Native Americans were shot, clubbed, and burned alive, including women and children, by a band of Puritans and Mohegans, was the real origin of Thanksgiving, according to some, as there were accounts that it was proclaimed as such by Massachusetts Bay Governor John Winthrop. He stated this in gratitude to God for the destruction of the village. Massacres of the natives were routinely followed by days of Thanksgiving thereafter. One thing to note is that there was violence on all sides of this initially, but the Puritans and allies literally slaughtered the tribe.
So, did I just understand you correctly in saying that every time they slaughtered indigenous people, they had this, like, quote-unquote Thanksgiving?
Apparently. That there were days
or
of
a
thanks.
Celebration. There was a period of celebration that we just annihilated a group of fucking people.
From my understanding.
Who tried to help us.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck that shit. Fuck all that shit. That's all I have to say about that.
Nope, I concur.
Yeah, cheers to that. Fuck that shit.
Dear listener, if you don't understand why that's wrong, you don't have to be on our podcast. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that story that you just shared really speaks to that idea that these people, like the Native people, were not viewed as human. It didn't matter if they shared their supplies. It didn't matter if they provided food, shelter, or to meet those basic needs. It came down all it came down to was that they were not Christian. Therefore, the colonizers felt justified in destroying hundreds of thousands of lives over time because they were not viewed as human lives.
And what just really clicked in my mind is this perspective of, I am sure that there are listeners who are experiencing this historical journey with us who are like, well, okay, but the colonizers might not have been all bad because maybe it was a hostile environment. I mean, that happens in war, right? And then you celebrate a victory from war. That goes back to the beginning of fucking time. Like that's even an animalistic thing, okay? But dear listeners, let's go back to saying this wasn't a hostile environment. This was not that.
Yeah, it did not become hostile until the Europeans brought that way of basically conflict resolution. Prior to that, yes, there was conflict between tribes. Oftentimes, they would resolve that conflict if they could not do it through negotiation and through conversation and barter. There was a game. They would literally play a game to determine who the winner was, and very few lives were lost. So the bloodshed, the fighting, the warring that people talk about that took place among the tribes did not occur until they were pretty much forced to form allies with other European settlements in order to preserve their own well-being and their own livelihood.
Yeah, and from what I was reading, there were issues on both sides where there were attacks of small increments, but the main thing here is the Puritans literally slaughtered.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They went from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
There is no excusing that. There isn't.
No, and I think what you just said is that there might have been little fights here and there, which happens. People get territorial, right? Like, I'm not saying that the Native Americans were completely peaceful the entire time. I'm sure someone had a problem with it, right? Like, we weren't there. We don't know that. We can't speak to that. But a singular fight here and a singular fight there is not the same as extinguishing an entire population of people by the thousands.
Mm-hmm.
A fight here and there is not the same as a fucking massacre. And that Native American people did not bring that to this fucking table.
Yeah. So I have 2 final pieces here of history. So,
I love your history.
It's the first time you've ever said that you like history.
I know, especially on this episode. Like, how fucking brutal.
Another thing to note is that the image of Thanksgiving is often referenced to as the peace between the Pilgrims and Wampanoag. What isn't noted is that this eroded as time went on due to the colonists continuing to push boundaries and resulted in an extremely bloody outcome on both sides, known as King Philip's War. And then the last piece is, Thanksgiving has been replaced by some Native Americans by the National Day of Mourning.
As I feel like it should be.
I agree.
I go back to, I love Thanksgiving conceptually. I love the idea of a holiday that forces us, or forces is wrong, but encourages us to truly be thankful for what we have instead of all of the commercialistic holidays that are literally 90% of the other fucking holidays we have in this country. But I really, really don't feel good about celebrating knowing why that tradition was born. Louise, what are your thoughts here?
Well, thank you for asking. It is hard. It is, kind of going back to that dichotomy because I, spent the first half of my life, I guess, kind of in a pre-awakened bliss where I thought that I could just, have the best of both worlds, like I could be Native and I could also assimilate with dominant culture. And so, like celebrating Thanksgiving was the norm for like the first half of my life. And then as I moved up here and really started to embrace and learn about and become awakened of my Native culture, I realized that it's hard. It's hard to walk that tightrope, or you know what I mean. It's hard to have that balance. And by celebrating Thanksgiving in the origin that it was taught to me for the first 20 years of my life, I realized that I am not honoring my culture, and I'm not honoring my ancestors or my heritage by celebrating it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that I don't. I still go to family Thanksgivings, but fortunately, I think a lot of Native people have adopted humor to be able to navigate such hard times. And so when I go to Thanksgiving, usually it's met with some humor about it, you know, like, oh, well, you know, we only celebrated it that one time, but now I have all kinds of ammo with bringing in this whole something else thing at Thanksgiving this year. So, you know,
I'm going to be really honest. I don't know what that is. I saw that you had posted something on Facebook about this, but I genuinely don't know what this is.
Cool. It's wonderful.
Can I ask?
Yeah. So, Election Day, CNN had kind of done this poll, broken up into demographics of white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and something else. And that's the graphic that they had on CNN. So I guess, you know, across like Native communities, you know, across our country, we just embraced it and ran with it and made it into a big joke. And it's like, hell yeah, we're something else.
Oh my God, yes. But also, okay, I love that it has been empowering and that Native people have found the humor, like you said, but at the same time, how fucking insulting that our president... Holy shit. Holy fucking shit.
I think it had to do more with like exit polls, right? So like what is your demographic and who did you vote for? So it was CNN that had put up the graphic, and you know, and people were kind of coming to the defense of like, oh well, you know, if that's just what they answered, that's just what they answered. And it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna have demographics accounted for,
they need to be inclusive.
Polls, yeah, they need to be inclusive and eliminate the line that where somebody can check something else or replace it with I prefer not to answer or something. I mean,
right.
And those are those like small microaggressions, or that's an example of one of those small like microaggressions that just build up over time, you know, not just for Indigenous people, but for, you know, other marginalized populations. But yeah, I think there was a lot of humorous feedback across social media in response to the something else. But there was also a lot of people who really took it back and, you know, said, I am not something else. I am, you know, I'm from this tribe and this is my clan. And so it was funny, but it was also empowering. And it's also kind of like humorous, like kind of because that's what we're used to. You know, Native people make up a very small portion of the population in this country. And so we're kind of accustomed to just being forgotten. So, you know, it felt kind of like, I guess it was funny because we're just not surprised.
A funny, not funny moment.
Exactly.
I feel conflicted about that. I hear you say, like, it's funny because hell yeah, I'm something else. Like, Tiny is something else. Like, I understand the draw to that in a positive way, but at the same time, I do just go back to, like, how fucking insulting that you couldn't
and they gave, like,
identify
kind of
people correctly.
Apology on it. Yeah.
Of course they did. Nothing full-assed, though.
Nope.
Right, no. Only half-assed.
Only half of it. Just the right cheek. That's just sad. All right, carry on.
So the next part that I have is the economic side of things. A few sources for this portion is Forbes.com, Britannica.com, and NCRC.org. So the first part here is in relation to specifically reservation issues. It'll make more sense once I start talking about it. So,
like issues within reservations?
Nope. That's why it's going to make more sense in a second.
I'm excited for it to make more sense.
Yay. So from Britannica.com. Economic underdevelopment has been an ongoing problem for many tribes since the beginning of the reservation eras in the United States and Canada. Reservations are typically located in economically marginal rural areas, that is, areas considered to be too dry, too wet, too steep, too remote, or possessing some other hindrance to productivity even at the time of their creation. This blew my mind because we look at where a house is built. If it's built in swampland, it's not worth as much because nobody wants to live and swampland. I never thought of that when it came to land delegation for reservations and how land being delegated by the government, they wouldn't be choosing prime real estate.
Well, not only that, but they literally said, we will give you land. And then they turn around to their golf buddies and are like, ha 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 ha, we're giving them uninhabitable land.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
I just said it in layman's terms.
Yep.
Sorry.
So
my bad.
That kind of blew my mind.
That also blows my mind.
And I think that, it was specifically designed that way to rob tribes of their natural resources, because if they didn't have waters to fish or land to hunt, then they could not provide their families with food, and they would have to rely on government assistance, food commodities, things like that, which, really created kind of a interdependence on the United States government, and at the same time, a lot of mistrust, for obvious reasons. So yeah, land allotment could go on for days about that too.
That's news to me. Honestly, it is. And I was aware of land allotment. That concept isn't news to me, but here's your plot of land, JK, LOL, it's uninhabitable, that is news to me. And I guess I never really, I'm just going to be honest, I never thought about why this piece of land. That never occurred to me. It was just, okay, this was where these people ended up. I truly never learned it. I never put thought into it. And it makes sense to me, especially after our government took control of the continent in regard to property. But at the same time, that never would have occurred to me. So thank you both, honestly, for sharing that and teaching me that, because that blows my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it all, again, like everything, it's all kind of, meets at intersections, because, and I apologize if I'm getting too far ahead of ourselves, but, there's the concept of blood quantum, where Native people, along with horses and dogs, are the only living things that are measured by blood quantum, where the relocation to reservation, as well as relocation to urban Indian centers, played a huge part, directed by the U.S. government, to intentionally dilute blood quantum, resulting in fewer eligible members of tribes.
So when you say blood quantum, I want to make sure I understand this. Is that and the reason you said, or the reason that my brain went here, is because you had specifically mentioned horses and dogs. Is that the blood quantum the equivalent of your quote unquote purity as in relation to that origin of where you came from culturally?
Yes. Yeah. So of the federally recognized tribes, most of them, in order to be enrolled in that tribe, a citizen has to possess at least 1/4 blood quantum of that tribe.
Sure.
So, and there's a lot of complications. There's a lot of, again, I could go on for days about the benefits of examining blood quantum compared to not, and how it's my perspective that the idea of blood quantum is a colonizer's concept. But that's easy for me to say because I'm only 1/4 of the tribe that I'm enrolled in. So, there are people who have stayed on the reservation, been part of the community and part of the culture where that lineage is, I guess, stronger. And so, when we look at being able to provide services or allow citizenship to people who have lower blood quantum, it's kind of, I guess, people who have lived on the reservation for longer and have, I guess, a higher blood quantum within their family, they don't want to see it reduced down to 1/8 or further. So it's kind of this, again, dichotomy, even within Native cultures of, who deserves to be recognized as a citizen of that nation. If you moved away and you're living across the country and you are 1/4 and you're enrolled, do you deserve the benefits of that tribe if you're not living in part of that community? And I don't have the answers to that, but it's just one of the many, many layers of things to consider as a Native person.
Yeah.
Can I ask, and I'm just curious from your perspective, and you had mentioned that you have a lot of thoughts, which I love and would love to hear about all of them, but for the sake of our time condensed conversation, can I have one pro and one con from your perspective to the blood quantum theory?
One con, I would think, is because it creates division and it silos
Yep.
people instead of bridging gaps. And so that, I guess, would be the con to the blood quantum theory. One pro to it, if a tribe, for example, has 20,000 enrolled members, with 1/4 blood quantum being the lowest that they'll go, if they expand the blood quantum to include people who are 1/8 of that tribe, then that would open up the resources that tribe is able to provide to their people, and then people would get fewer resources, I guess.
Sure.
If that makes sense. So,
okay.
But at the same time, I guess pre-colonization, before these rigid boundaries and lines and groups and classifications were made, the tribes were not as siloed as we would think, even within. So you have like larger confederacies, like the Iroquois, for example, and then smaller tribes. And then within those tribes, you had smaller communities. I mean, people were kind of interwoven and it was all very symbiotic. And, even with colonization, people in tribes would take in children of settlers who were not able to care for them. So, just because the enrollment paper might say that you're 1/4 of a certain tribe, you could have ancestry from who knows what else. So it's just, it's hard to really measure.
That's super interesting.
So fascinating. And thank you so much for taking the time to educate us, even just that little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I had never heard of this. I knew of this concept, but I didn't know what it was called, and I didn't understand how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So just for me, thank you so much for teaching me more about it, because I really didn't understand it.
Agreed.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for giving me the space.
Absolutely.
So, from Forbes.com, Native American lands are owned and managed by the federal government. Nearly every aspect of economic development is controlled by federal agencies. All development projects on Native American land must be reviewed and authorized by the government, a process that is notoriously slow and burdensome. On Native American lands, companies must go through at least 4 federal agencies and 49 steps to acquire a permit for energy development. Off-reservation, it takes only 4 steps. This bureaucracy prevents tribes from capitalizing on their resources.
I am making the worst fucking face right now, and this is why. Hello, Native people. Here is this land that is uninhabitable that we're giving you because we're so generous. Also, we control that land. You can call it yours, but it's really not. And also, here's 49 fucking steps of bullshit that your colonizing neighbors don't have to fucking do.
It's like, here's the gift of red tape.
Oh my god. Here's the gift of red tape.
Yeah.
This is where red tape started.
This is your housewarming present.
Oh my god, that's so fucking asinine.
I joke because I'm uncomfortable.
I do. I laugh because I'm uncomfortable. That's welcome to taboos. I seriously, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Also, never what I was taught. I was told, and this isn't even just in education. This is in, like, Hollywood portrayals of Native culture and the Native American experience, which obviously I know isn't accurate, but to be so misconstrued is really, really troublesome for me. I think about all of the portrayals of the reservation being sacred land and being protected, which it is, okay? I know that to the Native American people it is, but then to learn it's sacred and protected, but really it's still owned by the fucking not Native American government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah, and I would be interested in learning more about that because, tribes do have a lot of sovereignty as far as their own governance. So, yeah, I guess I did not know the bureaucracy of those kinds of, you know what I mean? Like that's what it takes to be able to develop an energy system for your,
Yeah.
you know, for your tribe. But it makes sense. I mean, and again, I don't mean to get too off topic, but I think of like most recently the COVID pandemic, how it just ravaged the Navajo reservation. You know, a lot of neighborhoods, villages out there, like they don't even have running water. So how are they supposed to protect themselves?
Yeah.
You know?
Or similarly, I think about the North Dakota pipeline and all of the issues that caused, and all of the fuckery that is that we are not going to get into the fuckery to the level of which the fuckery was present. But specifically on the land concept, the American government fought so hard for so long saying this is our land, and Native American people are saying, no, it's not. It's totally ours. But according to this concept, it truly is the American government's physical land. And I hear you, Louise, saying that Native cultures are given the opportunity to govern themselves, but I truly think that's people to people.
Yes.
As opposed to, okay, here's your property, you can also govern your property. That's not what they said.
Yeah, it's probably more so like structures is the wrong word, but
they're tenants. They're tenants on that fucking property.
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of setting up your own infrastructure and business foundation and stuff like that. Basically setting yourself up as a community.
Society.
For development.
But I still go back to that literally only makes them tenants of that land.
Yeah.
That's like living in an apartment and your landlord says you can't paint the walls. Okay, well, I live here. I should be able to paint the walls. But I can't because I don't own this property. That's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
That pisses me off.
And it's my theory that ties into the idea of blood quantum and the goal of diluting that so that there are fewer members on their land, and it is easier then eventually for the federal government to take it back.
I'm once again speechless. Mm-hmm. 2 times in the same episode. I'm on a roll.
Mission accomplished.
Never fucking happens. And Louise is like, yes.
Yeah. So the next portion of information is about more individual statistics.
Let's hear some numbers and statistics.
Approximately 2% of the U.S. population is indigenous, according to the 2010 census.
I love that was the last fucking census that was done.
Censuses are done every 10 years.
Oh.
You are keeping that in this episode.
Awesome. Your face, you were so dead fucking. You are keeping that in this episode.
When you said last episode that you were like, you said something about it being new information and you were being sarcastic. I thought you were being sarcastic just for the sake of sarcasm.
No.
Not because you were joking about it.
No, I was dead ass serious. I didn't know that.
Yeah, national censuses are completed every 10 years.
Awesome.
That's why I said, yeah, it's 2020 now. I love you.
Please keep reading. Put me out of my misery.
Also, according to that census, data indicated that only 20% of American natives and Alaska natives lived on reservations. The largest Native American populations are found in urban centers such as New York, LA, and Phoenix.
Really? That's fascinating to me.
Little history behind that ties back into kind of what I was talking about in, I believe it was like the 1950s through the 1970s, because there was no job opportunity, because there was no resources available on reservations. First Nation citizens were given the opportunity to relocate to urban centers in order to, they were, given the initiative to encourage job growth and fueled by capitalism and productivity. So a lot of natives who were living on reservations up until the 1950s shifted to those urban areas. And there's actually, Minneapolis is one of the largest urban areas that is, I guess, densely native populated, and as well as Milwaukee.
That's really cool. And I really didn't know that.
So from ncrc.com,
NCRC.
the median income on a reservation is approximately $30,000 compared to the national median income for Native Americans, which is approximately $40,000. I thought that was an interesting difference, and I was hoping, I didn't know if you would have anything to speak to that on.
Well, I mean, I think it probably has to do with just the opportunities that are, or lack thereof, that are on the reservations compared to not being on the reservations. But moving off reservations definitely provides some obstacles. Again, that kind of division of people who stayed with their family on their historical land or whatever, to those that chose to relocate and then ultimately had no choice but to assimilate kind of into dominant culture of the cities around them. So
that has to be so difficult to have to make a choice whether to leave and go somewhere to potentially, hopefully personally prosper more, or stay with your people and your culture and potentially be stuck. Like, I couldn't imagine having to make that decision.
I couldn't either. What I do want to be sensitive to, though, is that Indigenous culture is not the only culture where that conflict is faced.
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, I think that it's faced in every single culture, and to not have to face that, I think, is something that dominant culture is very fortunate to not have to do.
Yeah,
I agree.
We can say that's a white privilege. I think that is. I love that you said it respectfully and correctly, but I'm going to say that's a white privilege. So specifically, I'm thinking of Amish culture, where I totally am drawing a blank on the day.
Rumspringa.
Thank you. But I mean, same concept of, are you going to leave and maybe not make it on your own? Are you leaving your family and your culture and how we raised you? Or are you going to stay here and then not leave?
Mm-hmm.
And your options are A, B, or C.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be a terribly difficult decision to make. There's no good answer. Like, really, that's what it comes down to, is you have to do what's right for you individually, but there is no good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. That median income, which as a reminder was approximately $40,000 for those outside of reservations as of 2017, pales in comparison to a Caucasian income of $67,000 nationally. As per the 2018 U.S. Census, Native Americans have the highest poverty rate among all minority groups at 25.4%. To put that in comparison to other groups, Black poverty rate was 20.8%, Hispanic was 17.6%, and white was 8.1%.
That sucks.
Yeah, it seems about right, though. I mean, that is consistent with, my research and stuff like that. So sounds about right.
The 2018 Bureau of Labor unemployment rate was 6.6%, with Caucasians at 3.5%. They also had the lowest educational achievement rates despite educational attainment over the years. According to the 2013 to 2017 U.S. Census Bureau, 14.3% of Native Americans have a bachelor's degree or higher. In comparison, the percentage for Hispanics is 15.2%, for Blacks is 20.6%, and for whites is 34.5%.
Wow. Because I have number dyslexia, you said Native American was the highest percentage?
Lowest
Percentage.
Yes. Is that something that you could speak to, Louise?
Especially because we didn't talk about your education, Louise. So please tell us about your education.
Sure. So I recently obtained my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So prior to that, I got my bachelor's in psychology and human development. So I am very fortunate to have been able to make it that far. But, as far as the obstacles in educational achievement, I think, again, there's a lot of things that go into it. There's other adversities that affect Native communities at higher rates. In addition to poverty, things like substance abuse, domestic violence, all kind of interwovenly play into creating additional obstacles for people to achieve a higher education, in addition to the not wanting to leave your community in order to achieve that higher education. So, and I mean, in all of those things that I had spoken about, well, poverty, substance abuse, domestic violence, I think all are symptoms of historical and intergenerational trauma that have been experienced as a result of colonization. Yeah.
I feel like you were reading my notes because that's my next section.
Oh, I was.
I really don't have anything to add to that because you really said it so well, but I just want to share how much I appreciate how well you said it, because I just am over here just really genuinely processing all of the things that I'm learning here. I wish that people said those things more.
Part of me also wonders if schools in areas that there are Native communities are given the same funding. I could probably just make the assumption that they're not.
I think it's fair to assume that they're not.
That, for instance, white communities are given. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because educational funding is not a federal thing. It's a tax line thing. So it depends on if you live
property tax, yeah.
Correct. So if you live in the quote unquote rich neighborhood, your school will be extremely well funded because their property taxes are so much higher. But if you live in a quote unquote poorer neighborhood, their property taxes are so much lower. So their education, which is so fucking stupid and so fucking wrong, and that is going to be an episode for sure where we talk about just educational funding and all of that. But I would agree that that's a really good question. And then also, what are those children being taught? Are they being taught, like, not education systems on the reservation? Because I understand that then there's a much more cultural approach to education, which is so beautiful and I'm really appreciative of. But children who might not be enrolled in the cultural education, but still are of enough blood quantum to be Native American, right? But they're going to the Eurocentric school. What are those children being taught about their culture that's contradictory to what they know and believe in their families, that then prevents them from really finding their identity to allow them to move forward with their educational pursuits in general?
Yeah. Well, and I think so, like, tribal schools that are organized within reservations are typically funded by the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So they operate differently than like public schools that are tax funded.
Okay.
But, similar to public schools, especially in impoverished neighborhoods, unfortunately, oftentimes there is a lack of resources. There's a lack of teachers. There is not sufficient social services within those schools to address the behaviors of some children that could be emerging, again, as a result of that intergenerational trauma that continues to be passed on, also as a result of some of those other adversities that I had spoken to before. But yes, they do have the cultural piece in tribal schools, which I think is phenomenal. Like,
agreed.
When kids are struggling to get through their day-to-day, or they're lacking in identity because they're walking this dichotomy between their native culture and dominant culture, to have that cultural education to give them a sense of identity and a sense of purpose definitely helps to counterbalance some of those adversities they're facing. As far as public school goes, I can speak to that because my children go to public school in our area, so they are not blood quantum wise enough to be enrolled in the tribe that I'm a citizen of. However, they are still very involved in the culture coming from our home, first of all, but also a lot of the schools in this area provide Native specific education to the Native students that attend the public schools.
Oh, that's excellent.
I love that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. One of the drawbacks from it, though, is that for those kids who are attending mainstream schools, it almost silos them or isolates them even more when they're getting pulled out of class or getting pulled out of the lunchroom to go and participate in this Native specific education.
Yeah.
So it has its pros and cons. But because I have a loud voice and I'm a strong advocate for the Native community. I was very fortunate that my kiddo's teacher has let me be a guest to educate the entire grade that my child is in, which I think is necessary because non-Native students need to hear and have exposure to the Native cultures that their peers are a part of, because we hear just like we started talking about in the beginning, we hear history and social studies and everything taught from a mainstream lens. And so, I'm slowly but surely working to advocate to have that Native perspective taught to non-Native students.
That's amazing.
I think that's absolutely beautiful, and standing ovation to you for doing that. I wish there was more opportunity for all cultures that are represented in public schools to do that and to really have, I mean, I know at the high school that I went to had a quote unquote diversity studies, but there was nothing our diversity studies class in high school that was diverse. I mean, there just wasn't. And I'm not knocking what my teacher at the time had or was able to do. I think he genuinely had good intentions with this class. But to have somebody from the culture we are talking about come in and say, this is my culture, this is what this means to me, you should know about it, and also here's the history, that would just be such a different experience. And I truly think in the concept of going back to our white privilege episode of how do we get beyond this? How do we move away from even white privilege existing? That's where it starts.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Is just having honest conversations about history and where these lines have been drawn. And I'm not even saying let's call out the right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not saying that. I think it's important to understand the past and having this like clean slate moment of just saying like, that's that. This is what it really was. This is what it really means. This is how we move forward. And honestly, just being educated that's the key to that.
I agree. So this is the behavioral health side of things that you psychically ascertained. So, oh, god damn it. This stupid thing corrected my typing for this website because it insisted it was his.gov, and that's not what it was. So I'm pretty sure this was ihs.gov and publicintegrity.org. From ihs.gov. Suicide rates for American Indians and American Native people are 1.6 times higher than the U.S. all races rates.
Wow.
Domestic violence rates are also alarming, as American Indian/American Native women are reported as having among the highest rates of sexual assault and intimate partner violence victimization. This little bit of information kind of adds on to that, and this is from publicintegrity.org. More than half of Native American women have been sexually assaulted, over a third of those being raped during their lifetimes. Let me reiterate, more than half. This is nearly 2.5 times higher than white women per National 2016 Institute of Justice study. More than 2/3 of the assaults are committed by non-Native people. The crazy thing to me is that those who assault natives on reservations can't be arrested or prosecuted by tribal authorities under a 1978 Supreme Court decision.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? What?
Yeah.
What?
Okay.
Yeah, because tribes who have criminal jurisdiction do not have the ability to prosecute non-tribal members, which is one of the reasons that human trafficking, sex trafficking, Native women are also 4 times more likely to be victimized in that way because of the, I guess, lack of jurisdiction on tribal lands.
That's fucking disgusting.
Native women are targeted on reservation land, knowing that by non-Native people, because the non-Native perpetrators know that they cannot be prosecuted.
That is literally the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. Ever. Including the law that says that you cannot carry a chicken over the Minnesota border. Fuck that.
And from what I saw too, essentially when cases are brought to whatever jurisdiction that they happen to be in, they're generally dismissed out of hand 3/4 of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand. I go back to that concept of self-governance, right? And land allotment. We gave you this land. Make the best of it. It's still our land. The gift of red tape. Okay, blah, 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 blah. But take care of yourselves. But you can't protect yourselves against anyone who looks like us.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking wrong. That's fucking wrong. That's literally just, oh my God, that you can't protect yourself in your own home.
Yeah. When I read those statistics, so initially, when I read the higher violence statistics, my brain went, what the fuck? But then when I read that they couldn't be tried by the tribe, my brain went, what the fuck? Like, my
brain stopped working. I genuinely, you guys, you saw my face, dear listeners. I had an absolute jaw-dropped blank fucking expression of, I do not compute. And then to Louise's point of, especially in our area over the summer, as there was a lot of activism happening, there was a lot of talk about the missing Indigenous women in our community. And I just didn't, I knew it was a bad thing. Okay, that sounds fucking ignorant and stupid. I knew it was serious. I knew it was wrong. But I did not understand that Native American people are then not allowed to prosecute or pursue justice or anything. They're literally not.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking wrong. Oh my God.
Let me clarify though. They are allowed to, against, quote, their own people, but not their own people, like, air quotes.
That's just...
I've never heard you make that noise.
I think that noise describes the situation perfectly.
I agree.
That is the most white privilege fucking example of white privilege I've ever fucking heard.
I agree.
That's fucking wrong. And just, holy shit.
To clarify, though, that doesn't just apply to only white individuals. That applies to individuals of all races.
It doesn't. And you are correct. But the rule was put in place by white people.
Yes.
To protect white people.
To protect white people. And I am just absolutely fucking beside myself. Please say more fucking things, because I literally I'm just going to sit here. This is where I would normally ramble. And I have no ramble because my brain is like, make this stop. I don't know. I don't know what my brain is doing right now. This is so fucked up.
Okay. On some reservations, Indigenous women are murdered at more than 10 times the national average.
Holy fuck. Holy fuck.
Yep.
Actually, super fast timeout. Super fast. And I'm glad that you said that because I was thinking about her the whole time. I know of a woman who was recently murdered. And it took like 3 fucking months for them to even confirm that it was her body. Like, they just didn't even try, and she's Native.
Yeah, I think there have been an additional 2 other women from that same area that you're talking about that have been missing since the beginning of the summer.
Yes, she was missing for months, and they just, like, couldn't find her. And then they apparently found her. They found her body in a car, and she had been torched in the car. And then they didn't do the testing that they were supposed to do for a long time. And they just kind of were like, well, we'll do it when we can. Her name was Stephanie. I think the important piece there is that there isn't recognition. There isn't accountability. Native people they're not even allowed to protect themselves.
No group of people should ever be murdered 10 times more than the national average.
First of all, nobody should be murdered.
Well,
except pedophiles.
Some people should be murdered, yeah.
Okay, so yes, but to your point, to have that be so drastic is just mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy fuck. That's in a room of 100 people. 10 of them are just murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Just 'cause.
Yep.
Oh, Stephanie Greenspan.
Thank you for finding it. I know for a fact that I had shared the post and I just couldn't find it. Stephanie Greenspan?
Yeah, Stephanie, Greenspon.
Thank you for finding that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she had children, like she has young children, and her perpetrator, the man who killed her, was white. That hits close to home for me. That was my correlation here. With those numbers being so high, I don't personally know Stephanie, but I do personally know somebody who very personally knows Stephanie. So it's not even like 6 degrees of separation. It's genuinely 1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that then, to your point, Louise, that there were 2 or 3 other women in that area that experienced very, very similar things.
That
if
are
not
still
the
missing.
same,
Yeah,
that are still missing, if not the same exact thing, right?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's just fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and, not to go back too far to the, dehumanization concept, but it's like we are just, as people, just not recognized. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To the effect that there was no data collection on missing and murdered Indigenous women until 2006 is when they started collecting data to come up with statistics, because it was so unrecognized that they didn't even feel the need to track that data up until 2006.
That's disturbing. That's so disturbing.
In the year 2016, there was nearly 6,000, once they started tracking the data, in 2016, there was nearly 6,000 women, Indigenous women, who went missing or were murdered, and only 2% of them were ever reported to the FBI, which is the only place that you can get prosecution on tribal land, is through the FBI, because it's federally, controlled. So 2% went to the FBI out of 6,000 almost.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I just don't have anything to say. I have a lot of things to say. I just don't have anything productive to say. Because that's so fucked up. Oh my God, that's so fucked up. I can't imagine what that would do to a group of people. Mm-hmm. It's not just what that family went through. It's not just what that victim went through, but knowing that this on a macro level can be this theory, this concept, this cruelty on a macro level can be applied to a group of people all over our country. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But here we are having the conversation.
Here we are,
and
that is.
This is all.
Thank you. Yes, because that is where it starts. I'm sorry, I just got so overwhelmed and I got overwhelmed in my ignorance. Like that's what I just experienced, is that I didn't know these things, that I didn't understand to the level I should have as an ally of all people, of all cultures, right? Like I take pride in that, and I didn't know these things, and I don't have words.
Working to learn is the first step, though.
It is. And I really appreciate this entire conversation. And listeners, I really appreciate you being here with us for this conversation.
Same.
Oh, you're so cute.
So, from AmericanAddictionCenters.org. The rate of substance dependence or abuse is higher among Native Americans than any other population group in the country. 2018 National Survey on Drug Use and Health Use found that 10% of Native Americans have a substance use disorder, 4% of Native Americans have an illicit drug use disorder, and 7.1% of Native Americans have an alcohol use disorder.
Those numbers, though, don't really alarm me, given that your options are stay in this uninhibited land and make $30,000 a year at max because you don't have any other fucking options. Like, it's not surprising to me that people turn to such toxic outlets because what are their fucking other options?
I get what you're saying.
It's a coping mechanism, when you have experienced trauma and you've seen your parents experience trauma and it goes back generations and generations, it's
Exactly.
easier to cope with those things by drowning them or escaping or whatever those substances do. And it's a lot of freaking hard work to learn about the historical trauma, to identify it within yourself, and then to take the steps to overcome that. And when your community maybe doesn't put resources into that education or provide resources to overcome that addiction or acknowledge that generational trauma, I mean, I don't want to say it makes sense, but
it's not excusable, but it is explainable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think that's really where I was going with that too, is I'm not condoning or encouraging that behavior at all, but I understand it.
Yeah.
And that's just heartbreaking. That's just heartbreaking on a whole different level. Addiction as a whole is heartbreaking, but to know that addiction of any kind, the numbers are that high specifically for a group of people because of those reasons, that's just sad as fuck. Like,
yeah.
And I wish and I hope for, and I am determined to be a part of a solution to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Yes, I
absolutely
appreciate your guys' allyship for sure.
For real. And I think that's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want with our podcast, is to be that for people, and not just Indigenous people, not just Black people, not even just on racial topics as a whole, like in general.
Yeah, anybody who needs representation.
Exactly. We are a representative space.
Yeah.
Or maybe I didn't say that as gracefully as I wanted to, but I mean, seriously, that's really important to us. So thank you, Louise, for being a part of this conversation and experience with us. And thank you, listeners, for being here in this safe, inclusive, beautiful, respectful space. Like, this just means the whole world to me. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And thank you, listeners, for listening to my ramblings.
We love ramblings.
Those two already said the things, so.
Dead inside, checking in.
Check. Those things. So, that's all I had, guys.
I mean, we have so many questions, though.
I don't.
You don't have questions?
No, I mean, no, I have two. All mine were answered otherwise.
Okay.
So, my first question is, do you have any Indigenous people specifically that you wish their stories were told? Like, if you could think of one person whose story you wish was told, who would it be? Does that make sense?
And that could be throughout history or in your personal experience.
Well, I guess what comes to mind is the story that I shared about how the Oneida people contributed to winning the American Revolution. I think that is really...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's immediately what I thought of. I was like, what? I never heard of that.
Yeah, like, that is what comes to mind. Yeah, that's what comes to mind. I can remember seeing one of my kiddos doing their, like, Revolutionary War play. And, it was scripted. I get it. But here I'm like, in the audience looking at the stage, and there's all these like multicultural brown people. A lot of them, have Indigenous heritage and culture, and yet they are being forced to tell a story that their ancestors participated in, but are not allowed to incorporate their version of the story. So that's, I think, just a fun snippet from the school system perspective. But yeah, the Polly Cooper story would be my number one.
Shout out to Polly Cooper.
Yeah. That was one thing that I actually wrote down was that this
Yes.
false narrative of Thanksgiving just needs to fucking end. Like, it needs to end.
And I'm not even of the camp of like, let's abolish the holiday as in, again, conceptually what it represents. But like, we need to have a real sit down conversation about what happened, who was wrong, apologies need to be made, and we need to move forward in some sort of cohesive presence.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not saying like fuck Thanksgiving in the concept of being grateful for the things that you have and whatever. That's not what I mean, but like reparations are due.
Right, because you can't be thankful for what you have without acknowledging how you got there.
Exactly. And if everyone and their brother is operating on this false pretense of this was this harmonious moment and the Pilgrims and the Native Americans came together and had this bountiful feast together, which is exactly what we're doing here. Ha ha ha. Aren't we lucky? That's not what fucking happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really do struggle with that as somebody who genuinely loves what this holiday means to me and my family, and yet what this means to you and your family, and how that's not the same holiday. Like, that's just, that's hard for me. Okay, so I have some fun cultural questions.
Okay.
Like, I'm excited about these questions.
I had one more question.
I want you to ask your one more question because I have fun questions and I don't know if this is a fun question.
No, this is probably
probably not fun. It's probably not a fun question.
You to end on, us to end on your questions. My question is, what do we do? How do we move forward? What do we do to fix it? What are the next steps?
I think that next steps are to become involved in the schools. I think it needs to come from both angles. I think it needs to come with having conversations with our children and preparing them to teach the next generation. And I think it also comes with advocating for what is taught at school. It's eliminating the practice of separating the white kids from the non-white kids to put on a performance of Pilgrims and Indians. It comes from, I've heard horror stories in schools for Native American Heritage Day. They're going to let everybody pick out their quote Indian name. And that is garbage.
Oh,
right?
Fuck that.
It just completely dismisses what it means to have a traditional name. So I think, it starts at home and it starts in the schools. And I hope that the listeners will take that and start having these conversations, maybe at Thanksgiving around the table, or to call and ask their child's school, what are you doing to honor Native American Heritage Month?
Listeners, this is your call to action.
It is. And then, you know what? Here's what I want to say to that too. Here's what I want to say to that call to action. Do that. And then do not tweet us about it. Like, don't tell us that you did it. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Like, this isn't something that you should get credit for. This isn't that. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. It's the human thing to do. You don't get credit for doing a human thing.
But I will give you a thumbs up to anybody that does it. There's my thumbs up right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're sending you love and gratitude, but also no pat on the back. It's a weird moment. So you had mentioned traditional names. Can I ask, do you have a traditional name?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I have not gone through the proper channels and spoken with elders to get a traditional name. But I will one day.
One day. And we will celebrate with you when you do.
Heck
that would be so
awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so some of my fun questions are, can you help educate not only us, but also our listeners to the traditional concept of a powwow? What does a powwow mean to you? What does it mean to your culture? This is a thing that I feel like gets misrepresented often. And I know that powwows are a beautiful celebration. I don't think that's the part that gets misrepresented. It's the meaning behind why. So can you help us understand just truly like what that means to you?
Sure. So, again, like I had said earlier, there are there's almost close to 600 federally recognized tribes, each with their own unique language, culture, music, and everything. So within those tribes traditionally, there were ceremonial practices. Okay. Those ceremonial practices included song and dance. I don't know that in any one of those languages was their ceremony actually identified as a powwow. I think a powwow is kind of more of a modernized term that is used collectively among like across the board of Native cultures to identify a different type of celebration or ceremony, because now what powwows really are a coming together of nations. So for example, if you go to a powwow on any reservation, you're going to have different styles of clothing and dance from across the country. Mm-hmm. And so what it kind of has transformed from traditional song, dance, celebration, it has kind of molded into this like collective celebration of song and dance for all nations that are represented there. And really, you know, what it is, it's almost more like now if you go to a powwow, I would almost compare it to, to a festival, I guess is the best term that I can think of to put it into perspective for people who haven't been to a powwow. You know, there's food vendors, there's clothing vendors, there's jewelry vendors, and then there are drummers. And typically what they do is they will have what they call a grand entry, where all of the dancers who are in their traditional regalia will come in and dance. And then from there, it is kind of broken into really like dance competitions based on category and age, where you compete against other people who are dancing in the same style and dressed in the same style of regalia.
Okay.
Does that help clarify?
Yeah.
That is awesome. Okay.
I love that. That sounds amazing. Mm-hmm. I think that sounds so cool.
Beautiful. I mean, it is breathtaking to be a part of that. And yeah. I mean, barring COVID, or aside from COVID this year, the powwows in this area are always open to the public.
Oh, I love that news. That was actually going to be one of my other questions, because I have a lot of friends. I mean, Kel is Native. Kel is half Native and half white. She participates in some things, but not all things. And I really want to be like, let's go to a powwow. But I didn't want to be disrespectful, because it's not just something that I want to just see for myself. I truly want to experience it. I truly want to be there to appreciate it for its beauty. It's not just my curiosity and like, let's do something because it's Friday. Like, I really want to go, but I didn't know that was the thing that was open to the public. So that I think is amazing and beautiful. And I really would want to go to that.
I would also want to come with.
Okay. We'll go.
Yeah. Let's do it next summer.
Yes.
You guys know.
No COVID.
I love this.
Bye COVID.
Bye COVID. Yep. we have plans for 2021.
We're going to be busy, COVID. You got to fucking go. Okay, so my next question was, I know so little about this, so I really I don't want this to be a sad question. I don't think it is supposed to be a sad question, but it's not really like based on a happy concept. Can you tell us a little bit about ritualistic funerals in your culture? Because I've heard some pieces, and I think it's absolutely the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in celebrating somebody's life. And I would really love to hear more about that. Can you tell us about that?
I honestly don't know a lot. There are, because there are so many different
variations,
nations and cultures.
Yeah.
And variations. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, so there's 11 different tribes in Wisconsin, which all have different, I guess, traditions in accordance to funerals. However, a lot of that is kind of enmeshed in doing funerals similar to like dominant culture, the way that they do it.
Okay.
One of the more prevalent customs when somebody does pass away, and this is, I don't want to say universal through all tribes, but common, is to have a fire. And depending on what tribe, that fire could last 7 days. Sometimes it's 4 days. Sometimes it's up to 10 days, depending on the culture. But what that fire represents is carrying that spirit back to the spirit world, back to the sky world, back to the creator's world, whatever that specific tribe might believe in. So having a fire that burns for a significant amount of time is common.
That is so beautiful.
So beautiful. Mm-hmm. And isn't it true that fire is manned at all times to ensure that it does not go out? Like, that it's a community thing, and it is truly the responsibility of members of the community to take shifts to ensure that the fire stays thriving.
Yes.
I think that's
it is. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep. It is tended to, through all hours of the night while it's burning. And, I have heard community members talking about how, they have been up with, really inventive ideas on how to keep that fire burning at 4:00 in the morning when it feels like there's a monsoon going through the area. So, and that is dedication.
That is dedication, and so beautiful. And I think what I really appreciate about that, just in general, is that, okay, this is me being real honest with you guys. Grief is the only emotion that I have no idea how to process. Like, my little empath self can understand and identify what I'm feeling, what you're feeling. Okay, I process all emotions pretty thoroughly. Grief is the one I genuinely don't understand. It's not that I don't feel sad. It's not that I don't empathize. It's not that. I just don't understand grief. Okay, I just don't get it. I shut down. I'm just numb. Okay. I think it's because I'm so fragile that I just don't know how to do it. Also, I've never truly experienced loss that was unnecessary. But when I think about a funeral in a traditional sense that we would be exposed to, it's just sad. It's so sad. And it should be, right? You've lost someone. But when I think about the fire ceremony, and that it is truly a community effort, and whoever is involved, I mean, seriously, that dedication to this person and celebrating their life for a period of time, days, where the whole community gets to mourn together, but not only mourn, celebrate. I think that is so unbelievably beautiful. And in my weird little self that doesn't understand grief, I very much gravitate towards that concept in thinking about loss instead of the traditional concept, like I said, of a funeral. Like, funerals I just don't do them.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to the collective, I guess, mindset that even though your body might not still be living in this physical world, we're still going to come together as a community to help you along your journey to whatever is next.
Yeah, I think that's just so beautiful and spiritual and magical. Do you have thoughts?
I agree.
I'm just a person that prefers to celebrate the life as opposed to the mourning of their death. So I look at death differently, I think, than most. I think that also plays into the fact that I'm not spiritual, so.
That could be. And I respect your position and your perspective on it, no matter what. And I think that's important. Do you have anything, Louise, that you would like to share with us and with our listeners that maybe we didn't get into today, that is just something that you think is just so important that you want people to know, or for people to hear you say? The floor is completely yours. Do you have anything like that?
I think just, which I'm sure your listeners probably already are very open-minded to be able, to absorb the concepts that you guys talk about on your show. So I guess I'm grateful for people having these conversations. I think a lot of the topics that we talked about today, I could honestly go on for days on each topic. So I guess any final words we'll just have to maybe save for a follow-up episode down the road.
I love this plan.
I do love that plan. Okay. Well, awesome. So I couldn't have said it better, honestly. And I sincerely look forward to a follow-up episode, and honestly, just having you back on the show in general, because I know that you're so passionate about so many things that plague our country. Specifically, like, I know that you have a very deep involvement in the homelessness community, not only in our area, but that's something that you're passionate about on a macro level. I want us to do, we will be doing a homeless episode and poverty in this country. And I think I've mentioned food deserts, like all that shit. And I would love to have you and your perspective and your experience and knowledge on those episodes as well, or those concepts and topics as well, just because I loved talking with you. I loved what you brought to the conversation intellectually, culturally. I loved this.
I agree.
I hated it.
Awesome. I loved it too.
I loved it.
It was a new experience for me, and I can walk out of it and say it wasn't so bad, and maybe I'll do it again.
Oh, love that. Love that glowing review.
No, it was great. You guys were awesome. I was literally like terrified just because I didn't know what to expect, but you guys were so welcoming and facilitated such an amazing conversation, and I am so grateful.
Oh, thank you.
And like I said, we make asses of ourselves every 5 seconds.
We do, it's true. Like, you're the only credible one here right now.
That is really true.
No,
you and Axel.
You guys are awesome.
So,
thank you.
As Celeste said, thank you for really helping us bring in the final episode of No Fucks Given November. I seriously think this is going out with such a bang.
I do too. It's really do. Amazing. It has. I've been just loving every single episode so much for such different reasons, and oh my god, just to have this experience so early in our career as a podcast, and to see that people have been so receptive to it gives me hope for humanity. It does. That there are genuinely other people out there who love the way that we do, just openly, that are just good.
Yep.
I just shout out to good people.
Shout out to good people.
Yeah, shout out to good people. And fuck Christopher Columbus one more time.
Fuck Christopher Columbus! I love that we had to sneak it in once more.
One more time, yeah.
Hey, what did you learn here today?
What did I learn here today? Oh my god, don't ask me that question, because I genuinely... I learned...
I'm giving you a 30-second floor.
That's fine. That's fine. I got this. Ready?
Time.
I learned that I genuinely can be speechless.
Ooh. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Oh, snap. I was ready
Twice.
for some...
Two times.
I was ready for some, like, huge monologue.
I know you were.
Wow. That was a good one. Don't leave me hanging. Wow.
Oh, it can happen. I think our listeners are like, what the fuck?
My mind actually just got blown.
Oh, that's how I felt this whole episode, was just genuinely like... in my head, like every time anything, like I just speechless. It's not that I don't have anything to say, it's that I don't know how to compute what I heard, and they're like, no words. Speechless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did you learn here today?
That I want to just burn all the history books in schools and fucking go pen them in myself.
Start over.
I mean, they won't be able to read my handwriting, but at least it's in there.
I'll translate for you.
Excellent.
I'll transcribe. I got you.
I love this plan.
Yeah.
Louise,
help. Why not? Yeah.
I love this. You were the epitome of knowledge in this episode, but did you learn anything today?
We just like to ask because we like learning, so.
I did not know what you had shared about the hoops to jump through. Here you're gifted with red team. You can govern and be sovereign on your own, but these are all the hoops that you have to jump through to do that. So that was, like I knew some of it, but not all of it. So that was really helpful.
Nice.
Here you are, your own people. JK, LOL.
Yeah.
Okay, so since I was speechless and all of my words were on reserve for this episode, I mean, you guys, I I think this was the episode that I spoke the least, and it's just because my brain was like, nope, not doing that today. I was here and participating and coherent, and yet at the same time, I have nothing. I have nothing because I have so many things. So this is me contributing by starting our outro. Yay.
Yay.
Yay. So I want to do a super fast shout out to our supporters, our listeners, to everybody who has gotten us here to this point.
We love you guys.
We absolutely love you guys. All of our guests. So far, we've had Andrew, Miss Dana, Miss Taisha, and today, Miss Louise. Like, we couldn't have these conversations without you guys as guests. So just for everyone who has participated, shared, loved us, doesn't matter. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In the spirit of what Thanksgiving means to me, on the good side, I am grateful for you as listeners, for other people as supporters, for our guests, and for you as my partner in this crazy dream that I had of making a podcast happen. So that's my thankful moment as we end this episode on Thanksgiving. Do you have a thankful moment?
Literally all the things you just said too.
All the things. And Axel. Look at him.
He's handsome.
So handsome. And Beast. I'm so glad that Static is back. I'm thankful for that too. In the thought of being thankful, shout outs to Dads on Dayquil, who plug us every opportunity they get. I love the dads so unbelievably much. I just genuinely, like, they are our number one cheerleaders.
Yeah, I'd say so. That's a fair assessment.
And now, dear dads, I want pictures of the three of you in cheerleading outfits. And if it doesn't happen,
I don't want this. Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. You're right. I take it back. But we do love you guys, and you are our biggest cheerleaders, and we are so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Maybe Josh just a little bit less, but Jordan and AJ for sure. Just kidding, Josh. Love you too.
I'm actually going to shout out Jim from Film Rage too, because
I know
you've been breaking my heart on Twitter with some of your comments.
I know. Oh, they're so beautiful and meaningful, and you always pick the best gifts. Oh, I love you.
So, yeah, that's all I got.
You know, I think that's okay. I think I'm good with that. You shouted out Jim from Film Rage. I shouted out the dads. We obviously have other people that we're grateful for in our Twitter family, but
I just have to say, too, Danielle from Geesebumps has been showing up in the comments.
Yes, Danielle.
Just going to war with anybody who
She does
racist, and I absolutely love it.
After the Black Women Matter episode, her comment about like calling people a rancid pile of trout or some shit.
Yeah.
She was like, "Come at me, racists."
So
And
basically what we're seeing is you guys are fucking awesome.
Yeah, we are. We are saying exactly that. So thank you to everybody who has helped us and loved us and supported us and gotten us to this point. If you would like to continue to support us in this journey, we do have a Patreon. The link is in the show notes. I'm not being lazy. I'm just trying to be effective and efficient. And Allie likes to plug that they're in the show notes because we can't be found on Patreon in any other way because we're quote unquote explicit, apparently.
Yep.
I'm the reason we're explicit. That's awesome. You can find us on Twitter at Taboos the Pod. We are also Taboos the Pod on Instagram. We are just Taboos on Facebook. And our email, if you ever want to send us anything, including your experiences with racism or any of our topics, genuinely, you are welcome to send those to us. Just no dick pics. If you listen to our Porn versus Reality episode, very clear exception to the rule, no dick pics. Our email is taboozepodcast@gmail.com. Like I said, we're open to whatever, so send it on over. If you have other concepts or topics for taboo culture, we would love to hear it. Like we've talked about before, we have 1,000 bajillion things to talk about, but we definitely want you guys to tell us what you want to hear about. So please don't ever hesitate to send us your taboo topics.
Also, just please continue to share us. The best thing you can do to help us grow and help us continue to get this message out there is share us, even if it's just with one person. It helps so much, guys.
It does, because we don't know, we meaning you and us, don't know what that message could mean to someone else. So us reaching people is really our goal, not in the sense of we just want to be successful, which is important to us, but more important to us is helping people and having these conversations and helping to normalize these conversations and encouraging other people to recognize and to feel that they are not alone and that we are having these conversations so that people as a whole understand even just a sliver of somebody else's perspective.
Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. I really felt like I butchered it, so I appreciate that you congratulated me. Another high five. That was a terrible one, but okay.
Yes,
So I think that's what I had.
yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for this journey of No Fucks Given November.
No fucks given November. Oh, I can't wait to sing that next year. Like, we're going to keep the jingle.
Sounds good.
Yeah. If you survive No Fucks Given November and you would like to purchase a shirt, they will be up on our Patreon page. You can get it to commemorate your time here with us.
What she meant by Patreon page was merch page.
I didn't mean our Patreon page. I, in fact, meant our merch page. Which will also be in the show notes.
It's late, guys.
It is. All right.
Well, on that note,
Do
you
Be taboos.